Hello, and welcome to today's webcast entitled Moving Your Budget from the Page to the Web. I'm Sean McSpaden, and I serve as a Senior Fellow with the Center for Digital Government. Very excited to be your host for today's webcast. I want to thank you all for joining us. I think we're going to have a great time over the next 30 minutes or so. We do have a few housekeeping notes for you on the screen. We will email you a recording of this presentation to all registrants within 48 hours of the webcast. Please feel free to use the recording for your reference, or feel free to pass the recording on to your colleagues using the share widget in the console menu. Well, it's my great pleasure to introduce our featured speakers for today. I'd like to introduce Debbie Evans, who serves as a Senior Customer Success Manager with UNA Solutions, and also Cecilia McCorkle, who serves as a Budgeting and Implementation Consultant with UNA. I want to give each of them a quick opportunity to introduce themselves to you all. Why don't we start with Debbie?
Sure. So hello, everyone. I'm Debbie Evans, and as Sean said, I'm a Senior Customer Success Manager for UNA Solutions, and I've just recently started working for UNA under the Questica budget solution. And previous to that, I worked over for 32 years in municipal government. So I worked for a large municipal government, and I worked in the finance department and looking after the financial systems, and I worked in IT as a project manager. And yeah, so I have quite a few years of budget knowledge and government knowledge. So hopefully I can help you out with answering some questions today for you all.
Well, absolutely. Thank you so much, Debbie. And Cecilia, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Cecilia McCorkle. I am a consultant, as Sean just told you, here at UNA Solutions. My concentration is on budgeting and implementation. So really my role is to assist clients in maximizing the software that they purchased with us and getting the best return on their investment. Prior to working at UNA, I worked for 15 years in public budget and finance. My last role prior to coming to UNA Solutions, I was the countywide budget division director for Pinellas County, Florida government. And there I led a team of budget analysts through the budget development process, ongoing monitoring throughout the year, creation of our budget documents, among other things. Also during that time, I was responsible for managing the implementation of the Questica budget software. So I've actually used Questica as a customer and now as a consultant helping other customers.
Thank you so much, Cecilia. Great to have both of you with us today. I'm really excited about our conversation. I have my own background in Oregon state government, 25 years in Oregon state government, the first 15 in the executive branch. I served as the deputy state CIO for Oregon. I was responsible for developing Oregon's IT budget instructions and working with the agencies in the executive branch on their budget development throughout that entire period of time. And then for the last 10 years, I worked with the Oregon legislature for the Legislative Fiscal Office. Our office helps the legislature here in Oregon put together the state's budget. And, I work on, again, the IT component. So, I think we're kindred spirits, so to speak, caring about this issue. It's something people don't think a lot about, but certainly for government entities, the budget drives everything. And your ability to quickly move through this process in a transparent, effective, and efficient way is really important for everyone involved. So I'm looking forward to our conversation. Well, let me kind of set the stage for that conversation we're about to have, to ensure the audience knows what we're going to be talking about. I think all of us would agree, and many on the call would agree, that most of our budget workflows are labor intensive. They're full of spreadsheets and folders, and that can really hinder organizations' progress, both in the central office, but also across the departments. It's sometimes overwhelming. It's incredibly long in terms of its full duration, and not particularly transparent or really effective in terms of planning for the organization and being able to execute that plan over time. Certainly with the advent of the cloud, Implementing cloud-based budgeting solutions can allow your agency to increase efficiency, enhance transparency, and we're all after that all-important saving of time to ensure we can achieve our budget outcomes. We're going to talk today about the kinds of tools that organizations like those represented by our audience can implement to achieve cloud-based budgeting. So during this 30-minute webinar, we'll have a chance to talk to our expert speakers, Debbie and Cecilia. We'll gain some of their insights and hear their best practice approaches to discover how these cloud-based solutions can help supercharge, so to speak, your agency's budget process. So we'll talk a bit about the evolution of government finance and budgeting. We'll talk a bit about what digital budgeting tools can be implemented to increase efficiency, accuracy, and compliance, and also close out our conversation talking a bit about the value of budget book transparency and how you can get there with these kinds of cloud-based tools. So before we get started in our conversation, though, for our audience, we do have a poll question for you. We'd love to learn a little bit more about where you are in your budgeting journey. So, as the question indicates, what are your biggest challenges in the budget development process? Manual budgeting processes, multiple systems being used to develop the budget, which sometimes can lead to error, or collaboration challenges. Obviously, there's a lot of give and take, a lot of passing of information back and forth across departments to make this all work. Please record your responses, and while you're doing that, Cecilia and Debbie and I will have just a brief chat to learn more about their experience. So, Debbie and Cecilia, can you tell us a bit more about your experience in government finance and how budgeting processes have evolved over the years in terms of the organizations you've worked with? You want to start with Cecilia?
Sure. So like I said, about 15 years ago, I actually entered the public sector in a budget office. One of our first difficulties I had there, I had come from a private sector budgeting and accounting background, so it was a lot different coming to the public sector. But one of our first challenges was really producing a document, like a budget document that was transparent. And transparency is a big thing. Again, I'm still in Florida. I was in Florida. There are state laws that actually enforce transparency throughout the government. So what we were trying to do was, we had a budget software, but also trying to take everything in that budget software and produce your budget book, meeting all your legal requirements, and also producing something that was transparent. At that time, we had 5 commissioners in that particular board. 4 of them had just been recently elected, so they did not have a lot of experience with the budget for that county. And our budget book at that time, and again, I was about 3 months in when we were producing the first budget book, was really just a document of numbers. There was not really any context to the numbers, no analysis involved. It was just numbers. And I probably can tell you they were not very happy to receive that on their first budget book. And of course, I didn't really know any different at the time, but we had to make a really quick change of pace. So between our first version of the budget, which was called the proposed, we had to create something with some context, some description, some analysis, and that became a very manual process. We had someone create some crystal reports, which again, just really pulled the numbers for us. And then we took those, moved them into Excel, typed up all kinds of analysis and detail for the GL accounts. And this was an excruciating process. And that went on really for years. That was how we developed our budget book after that. And it was incredibly painful. And I will tell you personally, developing the budget book over my history has been one of the most painful things. So I love now that there are easier to use tools, much more transparency, even interactive tools, being able to just not even just provide your leadership with that level of detail that they want to see, but also the citizens, their constituents, being able to see what's in the budget, what are their tax dollars going to pay. I think this is really important, and it's just wonderful how it's transformed so quickly over the years, at least from my experience.
Well, I appreciate that background. And Debbie, can you share some of your experiences?
Sure. So, well, like I'd mentioned earlier, so having worked in the government for over 30 years, it's changed quite drastically how the budget process has changed. So way back in time, we had a lot of paper, shuffling of paper going back and forth. Then we had Excel documents that everyone was sharing, and then you weren't quite sure which one was the one up to date. Then we had some in-house softwares that we were using. We had a business warehouse that we tried to configure, and we'd have our capital budgeting in there, but nothing that was all-encompassing. So we wouldn't have a software that contained all the data for all of our operating, our salary budgeting information, our capital, any new initiative requests. We had separate software to keep track of all that. So again, we didn't have anywhere that would capture everything all together. It was all bits and pieces all over, and then we had to bring it all together into the budget book. And then you want to make sure what was the most accurate information, and who was changing what information. So this was all very spread out throughout the corporation, or spread out in finance as well. So about 12 years ago, we ended up purchasing the Questica budget. So that allowed us to contain all of that budgeting information into one system. So we went from a centralized budgeting process to a more decentralized process where we could share that information throughout the corporation with the departments, and they could input their budgeting information into the system. So the software was very collaborative with all the departments and divisions and the budgeting staff. So also over time, we found like the public were asking more and more questions. They wanted to be more involved, and municipalities needed to be more transparent. So you needed a software that would be able to do that for us. So we would be able to show the public and council that we were financially prudent. We were able to illustrate how we would fund our projects over the 10 years, be able to demonstrate how we have a continuity of reserve and reserve funds, so that we can determine, do we need to go into debt? So all these different questions and functions throughout the budgeting process was much easier once we had a system that contained all the information and kept track of it all in one place. And the departments, the senior levels of government were able to go in and take a look at this information as we go through the business process before it's finalized, and lots of checks and balances.
Well, Debbie, thanks so much. Just a great run through of some of the challenges, and then also some of the benefits of these kinds of solutions. Why don't we go to our poll question results, and then we'll move back into our fireside chat. Here we have the vast majority of our respondents indicating really it's collaboration challenges. I actually I agree with that, because there are so many handoffs in the budget process, but I'm a bit surprised by that. What about the two of you, very briefly? Anything that stands out with those responses?
No, I can. I'm not surprised at all.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's pretty. Other than the collaboration's a little bit higher, but yeah, pretty evenly. So yeah, the same issues seem to be across the board for all governments, it seems.
Yeah, it is kind of all of the above, for sure. Yeah. Well, let's keep moving things forward. Debbie, you had a chance to talk about again some of your background, some of the challenges, and then you led into some of the benefits of these cloud-based budgeting software solutions. I want to give Cecilia just a chance. Do you have anything you want to add to what Debbie talked about in terms of the benefits?
No, actually just thinking about the collaboration. This is a big thing. We in Pinellas, before we implemented Questica, we had an enterprise-wide budget software, but it just still didn't do everything that we wanted to do. We wanted to see a lower level of detail. So we used spreadsheets for that, and then eventually created an internal application to try to get that level of detail that we would then take and try to import into our budget software. We use spreadsheets for CIP. We use SharePoint for decision packages or issue papers, as some folks call them. We were just trying to manage all these things in different places and have different people work on them, and then manually get them into our budget software. And to try to do that without error was just, it was very nerve-wracking. Just being able to have one software that was a great solution, it was flexible, allowed us really that ability to get out of spreadsheets, to get off of, you know, SharePoint forms and be able to do all this, get our CIP. We didn't even have our CIP actually in our original budget software. We managed that outside of that, and we just load like a GL number, you know, one lump sum to the GL when we did the budget. But we were able to actually manage the capital projects within the budget software. So that was a big deal, because those were some massive spreadsheets.
Yep. Absolutely, absolutely. You know, Debbie, I want to come back to you and give you a chance to add anything you'd like to add around how these cloud-based budgeting software solutions can improve accuracy, transparency, and accountability.
So, sure. So, as you all know, as we were discussing, having all these different systems, it's hard to keep track of everything. So if you have a cloud-based software system that allows people to go in and have one source of the truth, so that's really a great benefit, is having, you know, one place that you can keep track of everything. People know where to go to get the information, to review the information, you know, you're not updating multiple places and then bringing everything back into one document. So it's great having one source of the truth, and also with the cloud-based budgeting. So, you know, more people are working from home or elsewhere. They could be around the world working, and they could be, you know, signing on to the system and reviewing if there's a deadline. They could be anywhere going. They can sign on and look up the information and approve, and things can keep moving on. And so it's definitely collaborative. Everyone can be going there working on what they need to work on, and there's the approvals that they can go through, and everything. There's all checks and balances. So definitely the cloud-based budgeting, it's more efficient, more effective, and having more decentralized software can make it work. It becomes more collaborative, so the directors and managers be able to review throughout the whole budgeting process. They don't have to wait until everything's put together for them to review the data. They can go onto the system and take a look at any point that they feel free, and they can go in and look up, ask questions, and get things resolved as you go through the budgeting process. And with the cloud-based budgeting, there's security, obviously. It's easy. There's easy security set up to ensure that the right people are in the system, and they can only see what they need to see. They can only approve what they need to approve. And people who just need display access, that's possibilities for them as well. So you don't want everyone going in and touching the budget at certain parts of that the budget cycle, right? If you get to certain stages, you only want people to approve and others just to review and not make any changes. So also with the cloud-based, there's refreshing data. You can refresh the data faster and more efficiently now, instead of having in-house and having you have your own IT people doing some of these things, and it's always not you know, time restraints on people. There's quick disaster recoveries that you can back up your data. If anything goes wrong, you can always revert back to the previous day or previous hour, however you feel if there's any issues. And upgrades into the cloud-based budgeting, quicker upgrades that can be done on your time. It doesn't have to be done when you want to make that upgrade. You don't have to upgrade at this, you know, when the software is telling you, you can go ahead and do it at your own time. So using the cloud-based budgeting, it's definitely more efficient and effective for all people that are using that software, for sure.
Well, thank you, Debbie. You know, certainly you went around the horn with all of the kind of key issues that are involved. I'm going to come back to you in a second, Cecilia, but I wanted to remind our audience, you do have the opportunity to ask some questions. So please use the Q&A feature on our webinar console if you have any questions for our speakers. We're going to get to those in just a few moments. But Cecilia, I want to come back to you and ask whether you have anything you wanted to add about transparency. Our audience in the poll question, they talked about this collaboration issue. Debbie, of course, touched on that in her responses. But is there anything else you wanted to add about how these kinds of solutions can facilitate collaboration and communication among and between the different departments, or how it might impact the overall relationship with constituents or the residents of your particular community?
I actually believe these budget solutions really help build a lot of trust. If you think about first within the organization, as Debbie mentioned previously, a lot of times we would have a centralized budget development, which didn't really allow departments to really feel like they had a say in their budget. And even decentralized, sometimes somewhere throughout the process, your departments are going to get lost. And when we were doing budget development, we would often hear departments say, well, we're right there at the beginning. We tell you what we need. We have some discussions, and then 4 more months go by and I don't really know what happens to my budget. And as much as we try to communicate, your budget and your finance office are so busy at that time making changes on the fly, you can't always communicate the way you hope you are. And so having these tools, like Debbie said, allows them access to it. Even if you only give them read only, they can see what's happening. They can set alerts. They can, see what's going on with their budget. So there's not a surprise where I ask for this, the budget's adopted, and I only have that. It also helps with accountability for those departments because, again, they can request what they need. You can go through a budget review, have that transparency for all the stakeholders, and be able to right size your budget and then focus on moving in one direction to hit your organizational goals. So it does keep the departments aware. But as far as your public is too, I touched on it earlier, being able to give them access to seeing what's in your budget and being able to see exactly how it's being used. So, UNA has an open book solution, which is really a public-facing transparency site. It can be internal as well, but it is a public-facing transparency site. And what's great about that is, one, you could have a budget book out like that, but aside from that, you can have an ongoing reporting throughout the year. So, the citizens can come in, drill into charts and graphs and be able to see exactly what they want to see. When you're producing a budget book or when you're producing a budget and you're trying to communicate with your public, you don't always know what they're interested in. You have to make a lot of assumptions of this is what they're going to want to see. Otherwise, your budget book is going to be 5,000 pages. You can't cover everything. And then it's very difficult to keep them in the loop after budget's adopted. So being able to have accessibility to all of these tools throughout the year, not just one time a year when they're actually ready to adopt a budget, I think really creates more trust with your citizens and with your legislative council or board and your departments. And everybody has an opportunity to see what's in there and they don't feel like anything's being blocked off from them.
Well, that's great. I appreciate both of you and your insights. We've got just about 6 minutes left in our webinar, believe it or not. So we're going to move into that Q&A portion of the webinar, and I'll take some questions from our audience. Before I do that, as we segue again to that Q&A, Cecilia, I know most public organizations certainly are familiar with the Government Finance Officers Association. There is an awards program, the Distinguished Award. Can you talk just really briefly about some of the important factors, of that award process and how they can be streamlined with systems like this?
So yeah, I'll try to keep it very brief. So first of all, when we would pull together the budget award application. So what we would try to do is at the beginning of the year, before we even started building our budget, review the criteria. They don't change too often, but having an understanding of the criteria is very important. And if you've submitted for the award before, you've gotten feedback from your reviewers, and figuring out ways to incorporate that feedback into maybe making your document a little bit more robust based on that feedback, because the idea is really to have some consistency in the documentation for, for public consumption, for your organization's consumption, but getting familiar with really what the GFOA reviewers are looking for in their criteria, and then plan your development and your budget book from there. Making sure you know what reports you're going to pull, what level of information in, and then as you're developing it, be able to identify those as you're going through that book, because what we did a few times, and it was extremely hard, is you get through your budget development, you have your adopted budget, you're finally done, you just want to breathe a sigh of relief, but now you have to pull that application together. If you're not really proactive in planning this out ahead of time and sticking to it, it just becomes very cumbersome to try to go back and find what page did we discuss this on and be able to identify that. So I would just say planning from the beginning of the year, before you start working on anything. So then you can just, basically check it off the list as you move through the process.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. That important background on that award program and how to prepare for it. I'm going to move to you, Debbie. Some of these solutions have been used in some of the legacy systems and processes have been used in our organizations for 10, 20, 30, sometimes 40 years. I mean, we've always done it the same way. And now, these new kinds of cloud-based budgeting solutions are available. In your view, what kind of skill sets and experience or training is required of organizations to make this kind of transition? And, in your view, should organizations try to do this on their own, or, what kind of help can organizations like Unisolutions provide? Again, we only just have a minute or so, so if you could keep your comments brief, and then I want to give both of you an opportunity to leave our audience with some lessons learned. So, Debbie?
Sure. So, so definitely, yeah. Having a single source of the truth, which is a Unisolutions Questica budgeting software solution, is great. Everyone can, as we spoke earlier, everyone can put that information in there, and it's straightforward to be able to putting in all your data into this. It's very user friendly. It's once you make sure you have a team that can help set up that solution, that implementation. Make sure you set aside time and have the right people on the team to be creating that the software to make it the way you want it to be. It's very flexible. It can be the functionality is very flexible. So for each of the governments, you think everyone does it the same way, but you don't. So it can be created and the way that you want it to be, and you just have to have the right people on the team to help you. And Questica Budget definitely has project managers to help you along the way to implement, and definitely is a benefit to all governments to have a cloud-based budgeting solution, and to help your constituents as well, because they'll be able to view the information in an easy manner using visualizations, and there's transparency there so that they can go in and take a look to see what they are expecting in their budget. They can have input. They can go online and take a look at the open book or your budget book online to look at this information. So it's a benefit for all, for the governments and for the constituents.
Thank you, Debbie. Cecilia, we have just about a minute left. What are some of the key takeaways you'd like to leave our audience with before we close?
Mainly that if you're thinking about moving to one of these cloud solutions, there are so many benefits to them, and we've gone through a lot of them. I would say always be open to looking at your processes and trying to, not being so stuck in the way we've always done things. Look for ways to do them easier. Look for your efficiencies for your staff, for yourself, for your organization. And I think these softwares like we've talked about Questica a lot, and even the Open Book and the Budget Book Studio, they're all ways to make your processes much more efficient. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways from moving in this direction if an organization chooses to.
Well, thank you so much. As we talked about before, when we met several times to prepare for this webinar, the 30 minutes just goes very, very quickly. Unfortunately, we are out of time. I want to be respectful of our time commitments, so we will have to close. But I really want to thank both of you for your insights. Cecilia and Debbie, thank you so much. It's been great to meet you and work with you. And I'd like to thank Unisolutions for making it possible to have this important webcast discussion today. As we mentioned at the outset, public organizations, the budget drives everything, and these kinds of solutions certainly can be a help to help transition organizations into the future. Finally, I want to thank our audience. Really appreciate you spending your time with us today. We look forward to seeing you again soon at another government technology event. And I want to wish you all a great rest of your day. Thank you so much. Thank you, Cecilia. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you all.
Thank you.